Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hug for parents going through the teen and tween years. I'm Rachel Richards, parenting coach, journalist, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters. Now, do you remember your first love? The excitement, the vulnerability, the way your whole world felt like it was expanding and collapsing at the same time. Phoebe's with me. Phoebe, my daughter. We're going to talk about first love, breakups, how a parent can support you. First love is powerful, and I think for teenagers it's an emotional storm that shapes how you become, doesn't it? You come out of it a different person. Yeah. It teaches us about intimacy, boundaries, heartbreak, and who we are when we love and lose them. Now, in this episode, we'll talk honestly about your first experience of love, what it taught you, how it changed you, and what you think adults need to understand, yeah?
Yeah.
Right. So, first of all, I think what's really interesting about teenagers is I remember researching how teenagers develop. And this one line where they said, between 10 and 20 is this time when your teenagers become a sexual being. And I thought, oh, no, I don't want to. No, just no. Because I think I read that when you were quite young. And I think we're not going to talk about sex, but I just think that it's quite a big thing for parents to have to make that transition. And it's a massive thing for a young person. And it can happen at different ages. I remember you turned to me when you were 16 and you said, Mummy, you know I'm legal. Did you said that? You said that. Oh, no, that was just painful. And I went, yeah, no, I know.
That's so bad.
With a glint in your eye and no boyfriend on the horizon. Anyway, and what was really interesting is when you were little, you would, whenever we went into a room, and there were sort of cute boys there, you would always flutter your eyelashes. You were very flirtatious with them. And I'm putting this out there because you blindsided me. Absolutely blindsided me. And I'm saying this because what happened was Phoebe ended up with a girl. And I'm absolutely nonchalant about who people date, who they have sex with, who they marry, because it's just irrelevant to me as long as it's a loving, supportive, kind relationship. And Phoebe's godfather is gay. He's been married. He's divorced now, but that was a very long marriage. He's a very sort of straight person, but he happens to be gay. And I've got so many gay friends, and I also had lesbian friends when I was at university. So none of this is new to me.
Guys, gay people.
We know gay people. So look, I wanted to sort of preamble this because I think some parents find this very, very They, in spite of the zeitgeist we're in, they don't really feel comfortable with all of this. So, and for kids, it's important that parents understand this.
And even if you are completely accepting, it's still a bit of a shock.
Well, it wasn't a shock. I think what happened was Phoebe went away to a debate camp, and you just ended up calling me the first night and saying, oh, I've met this great girl. She's really fun. And it wasn't anything. It was just, because you would always let me know if you'd met somebody who you found inspiring and you enjoyed their company. And I was so happy. And then when you came back from the debate camp, I could tell that the way you were talking together was different.
Yeah.
But could you tell?
100%.
You could, right?
Yeah.
I was just kind of, oh, that's great. Tell me more. And then at some point I just said, that it's fine if you want to have a relationship. Yeah. Did you need me to say that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Talk about that.
Well, I was really struggling to kind of work out what I wanted, really. Because I knew from kind of the moment that I met her that we weren't friends from the start. We weren't really, it wasn't a friendship vibe. Even though there was nothing that we were doing, which is not but I was really struggling with unpacking that because it didn't really align with my self-perception. So I went through a bit of an identity crisis, and I was kind of going back and forth on, there were so many things. Do I want to ruin this friendship? Do I even bring it up to her? Things like that. And I really, really did need someone else because I was dealing with all of it alone. I wasn't out or anything I didn't have anyone I could talk to. And then in my mind, I was also like, if this doesn't even go anywhere, is it worth me even kind of outing myself for? But when you sat me down and said, oh, it's okay if that is where this is headed, it was definitely very relieving.
That's very interesting. You used the word out.
Yeah.
Does that how it felt?
Well, no. I didn't sort of come out. It was more, we just had a kind of discussion about my situation. And that was it. I didn't need to make a massive announcement to people or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I was exposed or like much had changed about myself. It was more just kind of like, oh, this is a part of me that I didn't realize was there before.
This is what's so interesting about identity.
Yeah.
Sometimes it blindsides us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're sort of tootling along thinking we're this, and then something changes that perception. And that's actually a very hard thing to do when you're sort of settling into yourself up to a certain age. And I think you did struggle talking to your friends about it. Thinking about talking to your friends about it.
Maybe primarily because I didn't want them to see me in a different way. Because I've never felt romantically to any of my friends. I know there's a massive distinction between sort of platonic love and romantic love. And I really didn't want them to think that I never, and I know they wouldn't, I know my friends, but I was just a bit scared that they would treat me differently, or they wouldn't feel comfortable with me in the room if they're changing, for example, or something like that. Stuff, it's just small things, but they were amazing. They were so supportive. And absolutely nothing changed, which was really, it was lovely.
And did you feel like, I think we had a conversation about whether you wanted to put a label on it, didn't we?
Yeah, well, my problem is that we were long distance, so she lived really far away. So we were texting all the time. But it got to the point where it kind of needed to go somewhere, and she wanted to see me. She wanted me to go to visit her, and that made me really stressed, because in my mind I was like, I know that this is not a friendship. I know that we've been kind of flirting back and forth, and I don't want to come and see you if I'm not confident that that's where I want things to go. It's almost like,
no, absolutely.
Because we'd actually been talking for a really long time at this point. I think it's been like a month or something. I didn't know, but it had been a while, and it felt like I needed to know where my head was at before I visited her, and that's kind of when I came to you and I was like, I really need help with this. And it was more basically communication to her, like, where are we going? Like, what is this? And it wasn't like I need a label on this, but sort of, can we acknowledge that this isn't a friendship?
Yes, yes. Yes. And I think she's in a different position, because I think she is very much out.
Yes.
To use that term.
Yeah.
It's very clear that she is not heterosexual.
Yeah.
Whereas with you, up until that time, because of the way you were when you were younger, not for any other reason, it didn't even occur to me that you might date a girl.
Yeah.
Which is just surprised me. I mean, nothing more or less than that. But it was lovely.
Yeah.
It was a very, very beautiful start to having a first love.
Yeah.
Romantic. You used to write beautiful things to each other.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Music, yes.
It was really nice. Yeah, I mean, I was absolutely head over heels.
I think as a parent, so for all the parents who might be listening who are thinking, oh, I can't imagine my child going through, I think what really landed for me was this idea that all I really cared about was that you were loved and cherished and felt safe, and that the person made you feel better, not worse. Because there's all these horrible stories about bad relationships, and I think that's what we fear as parents. We want our kids to have good relationships. So when you see your child in a good relationship, you're just so happy.
Yeah. And I remember it really was. And I remember looking around at, other people in my year and their relationships and thinking, you just don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you're missing out. Because I felt like we really, really had a connection that other people didn't seem to have. We were very emotionally sort of entwined. And that had good and bad.
Yes, because you're both female, and so there were ups and downs. But there's a lot of overthinking. Sometimes.
Yeah, we weren't very good.
Yeah, but that's normal. I mean, that's normal. I think most young relationships find that very difficult anyway.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about it. And actually what was interesting for you was you had seen other friends dating from much younger ages. Mm-hmm. So you had a picture of what other people's relationships looked like, and girls would tell you how it felt, and you could compare that to the one you were in, and you were very pleased that you were in such a warm, supportive, loving, romantic relationship.
Yeah.
Which was very nice.
Yeah.
Were there any things that people did that didn't help?
Help with what?
Help with, and I'm talking just generally about a loving, first loves and relationships. Are there tips for parents where you think, that wasn't? I mean, one thing I remember was a member of our family who, when we mentioned, she's dating this girl, she just basically went, well, and then she didn't ask you a single question. And it's hilarious because we all knew that if you had mentioned a boy that you were dating, she would have been.
Oh, she was going to. Yeah, yes. She was so excited.
So funny.
And it went completely over her head. But I mean, other than that, I think family-wise, people were really.
And you didn't have any comments from people.
No,
you're in a very
I've never experienced
homophobia
personally.
Yes.
Which is,
I think it's different for girls.
Yeah. Oh, I really agree with that.
Do you?
Yeah.
How so?
I think it's because of the dynamic with female relationships and things like that. It's so much easier, to be accepted as a girl who's gay than especially in my school, for example. I don't know. With guys tend to be a lot more physical. Not to generalize, but I think they are. And there's actually a real physical risk if, people don't like you for your personality. They'll set upon you. Whereas girls, I mean, I've never experienced any kind of verbal homophobia or anything like that. But then there's no physical risk at all. Whereas guys are very
Yeah. And coming back to the relationship, were there any feelings that sort of surprised you, things that you didn't expect to feel?
Well, I remember feeling there were times when I felt resentment.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Why?
Well, it was because obviously, again, we were long distance, so we were constantly trying to, we were trying to find time to communicate, to talk to each other. And then if someone wasn't available to talk, then it would be frustrating. Or if someone had plans, we maybe have because
you're having yes,
but
she's older than you, so she was in a much more different situation.
And then it would be frustrating. And but then also I feel like a lot of the resentment that would build up was because I wasn't voicing that things were upsetting me.
And I think that one of the problems with young relationships is believing enough in yourself to be able to voice your own feelings and your own expectations and being assertive. Mm-hmm. And I think some teens are very assertive, but a lot of teens find being assertive in a romantic relationship very difficult.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the most important things I've learned from this is I need to feel comfortable telling you what I like and what I don't like. What, as in, if you're doing something that's upsetting me, I need to be able to tell you. And if you don't like the fact that I don't like that, then we're not the right people for each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's, it's just something that's inherent to a relationship.
And I think that's harder when you're even younger. So if kids start dating, I was really glad that you weren't dating until you were 17.
Oh, yeah.
But if kids start dating when they're 14, or this is really difficult stuff to navigate. And those relationships are still really important to them. So those romantic relationships will be really big at the time, won't they?
Yeah.
What were the things that you learnt about yourself from being in a relationship? Because I'm sure it must have massively changed your identity. Well, it didn't change your identity. You're still the same person. But what's really interesting is, okay, from my perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I saw was somebody who was developed very, very strongly. You're very wise and very mature for your age, and also quite academic.
Yeah.
But you weren't going out to tons of parties. You didn't do the whole vaping, smoking, drinking stuff. And you did look over the fence and think, oh, I'd like to go to more parties. I'd like to whatever. But that wasn't really available to you where you were, partly geographically, as well as, you know, in terms of the friendships that you had. Whereas she was living in a town, city, really, where there were nightclubs, and she grew up doing all of that stuff from a young age, really a young age.
Yeah, I think we definitely complemented each other, balanced each other out, which is why it felt like we were really good for each other, because, you know, we just, like, she brought this element to my life that I hadn't really experienced that much before. And and her character, like, I'm quite mellow, I'm quite down to earth, and she's very charismatic and
Labrador.
Yeah, exactly. And so she really brought that out of me. I loved that. I really loved that. And I feel like that's often what we do in relationships. We're looking for people who give us the parts of us that we don't really have, or, like, you know, they help build us up and bring out that part of us. So in that respect, she definitely helped my confidence and my, like, my sort of social side. But I did find that I think it was just the nature of our relationship. I found myself sort of growing towards her and changing myself to sort of not necessarily accommodate that. Like, she wasn't asking me to do this, but I just found myself changing to, like, fit the relationship more than maybe I should have done.
Which is so normal.
Yeah.
People do it as adults. I think it's harder to resist that when you're young, when you've got a very plastic temperament and identity. And I mean, coming back to this whole, you know, what do you do if your child has a friendship and you don't like the friend? I always said, well, they're probably looking at that friend and seeing something in that. They want to themselves.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean to say they want to be that person. It just means that they're reaching for that. And yes, I think there was a moment when I started to see your identity, particularly your clothing, stepping over beyond where I saw Phoebe into something where you weren't comfortable. You weren't comfortable. You weren't even aware of it at the time until you were getting stressed. And I thought, but it's very hard to see that unless you've got people around you who go, oh, you know.
No, I so agree. And also, I mean, even things like our only like, we both had very busy days because obviously we were at school and working and things like that. So the only time that we would be able to speak was in the evening. And then us being asked, we would talk for hours, and sometimes we'd have phone calls and we'd be up until 2 a.m, 3 a.m. on the phone. And that would also just disturb other people in the house. And so I found that my sleep routine got messed up.
You begged me, because normally I remove phones from rooms. I don't allow, and you said, Mummy, this is the only time I can talk to her.
It was. Yeah.
Should I have put more boundaries on that particular situation? That's the thing.
I would have resented.
That was where you see, that's where what I decided in this situation, I thought I need to let her just.
Yeah. And in all honesty, I was struggling, but I was managing.
Yeah.
Like my academics didn't really slip that much, and things like I was able to maintain my life, even though it was more.
If I had seen your academics really suffering, do you think I should have stepped in? Because I could see you were managing
personally. Yes, because I have aspirations, I have dreams, I have goals that are very, very dependent on my academics, and I think I would have needed that intervention if things started going downhill. And that's also something that I noticed in the relationship as well. And it's only something I noticed when it had ended, is that I lost my dreams in the relationship.
Gosh, that's so interesting.
Like
painful.
Yeah, but it didn't feel that at the time. But I felt like I had everything that I wanted. You know, like I was getting all of this happiness from my relationship, and it just kind of, I lost my aspiration. I lost, my drive. I really did.
Wow.
And it was a bit of a shock actually coming out of that, because I can see how things would have ended really differently.
Wow.
Had I like.
And do you
stayed in
think
that
it was
relationship.
protective that you had a close relationship with me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not that I was like, I wasn't, I wasn't changing my entire life or anything like that. It's just, my actual drive.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like just disappeared.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it wasn't brilliant, but you still had time because it's your first year of very important years, and you were still keeping up with your work, and you were on, the predicted grades were still good. So I was thinking, and that mattered to me because it matters to you. So it wasn't something where it was my agenda, it was more your agenda. But I think if I'd seen, the thing that flags up things up for me was your concern about your clothes and having to be right for it. And I thought, no, this isn't right.
Yeah.
But I didn't stop things. I just looked at it and thought, this is worrying me.
Yeah.
And then it ended.
Yeah.
Abruptly.
Very abruptly.
I mean, you were going back to school and she called you.
Yeah, it was a bit.
But over the phone, come on. But this happens. You're in a distance relationship. And I said to her, because we can unravel this, but I said to her, in my opinion, this was hard baked into the relationship. This end was going to happen at some point.
Yeah. So she's a year above me, and we'd spent a really lovely summer together. We basically spent the entire, save for a few weeks. And actually, some of those weeks away, like, I don't know, I wasn't the best girl. But like, I wasn't doing anything awful, but we had a few tips and things like that. But like, other than that, we spent a really nice summer together. And then we talked to she's gone to uni now, and we discussed staying together during uni. But it's evident now to me, obviously, with hindsight, that would not have worked.
And it wouldn't have helped if I told you that. You just have to let them.
Yeah. It's so funny because everyone always does this, but people would say, oh, like that, the relationships really struggle when you go to uni. And I'm like, no, we're going to be the anomaly. We're going to be the outlier. We'll make it work. And it's like, I have my magic power. I do that. And I was like, no, we're going to be the ones who succeed.
Yes.
But yeah.
And what's so funny is I remember talking to one of your teachers. It was at it was a summer event, and there were other kids who had relationships where they were going on to university. And I saw one of the boys walk off, and she went, "Won't last."
Yeah, no, and I heard that, and I was like, yeah, they won't last. They won't last. We will.
So how did you find the way that I supported you when you broke up?
I think you couldn't have done anything better. I think you genuinely, it was a very, very hard time, but she ended things over the phone, and I was meant to be going back to school that evening. And I was absolutely devastated. I was devastated. We didn't.
We just went and hugged. I just let you cry.
And
I said, delay going back to school.
Yeah, so we didn't go back. I didn't go back to school the next day, and I think that's really important as well. If you've had a major breakup, like your child needs time. Yes. They really do, because it's like
you need to honour it.
It's mourning.
Yes. And take it seriously. Just because they're young doesn't mean they're really experienced.
100%. And it's just not productive. Like that first week. I mean, to be fair, for me, probably I was more productive than some people because my coping mechanism would work. But yeah, but I mean, nothing was really going in. It was more, of course, like I had. Like, actually, one of the things I did was that night, like, I did not sleep that night. I got no sleep. I was crying. I did not, I was in floods of tears. Got out of bed at 2 a.m. 2 a.m. I was like, I'm not lying in bed anymore. I'm not sleeping. So I sat down and I just wrote my personal statement.
Mercy. Because that's your coping mechanism.
I literally, there was no other way of blocking it out of my mind. I just had to focus on something, and I needed that deep focus because the thoughts were not leaving me. And I'm a really big overthinker, so I will fixate. And so really, like, that breakup was quite difficult because of that. So yeah, but I think one of the worst things from my experience coming out of this that someone could do if you're going through a breakup, is tell you all of the things, like the reason why you made the right choice, or like why you've won, or why they were so awful. Because actually, especially for me, like I was broken up with. It wasn't even like it was my decision, you know. So immediately that's like, you know, but and then having people tell you why you're so much better without them is just you're kind of dying all over again, because you're like, this is someone who I put so much energy into. This is someone who I deeply loved. I did respect them. I did, you know, there were so many things that I did like about them. So then having your friends or like close relatives tell you the things that they didn't like after your breakup is not the best.
No, that's
not the best.
awful.
But you know, often people,
And they're trying to help.
Yeah, they're trying to help. People will jump to it and say, you know, oh, you're so much better without them. Like, they're so ugly now. Not that
He doesn't have enough style anyway.
Yeah, exactly. All of these things, but it doesn't help. Like, it might make you laugh.
I don't think I said.
No, you didn't. No. You did. But I had some people say that to me.
Of course, because they think that, well, there's plenty more fish in the sea.
Exactly.
Classic.
You know, just rolling out the common phrase. And it doesn't help. Don't do that. Stay away from it.
That's really good.
Yeah. Having someone you love being shat on by your friends.
And she turned up 24 hours later to see you, and you called me and said, Mummy, I can see that she's at the station. And I said, do not see her.
Yeah.
Because at that point, that's where I intervened, because you had an exam to get into Oxford.
Yeah.
In 6 weeks from there?
Yeah.
And I just thought, you can't afford.
Yeah.
Can't afford this. She's the person who did the dumping. You have to focus.
Yeah.
What did you feel about me saying that?
No, again, it was definitely the right call. It was definitely the right call.
That was the point at which I thought, I have to say something, and you can't be allowed to.
Yeah. And I basically said to her, look, you know, it all felt very rash. Like, so much had happened. I remember reflecting on it, so much had happened in the matter of 24 hours. Like, it was crazy. 48 hours I'd been broken up with and then asked for back.
No.
It was kind of crazy. But I think we were both kind of...
But she's young too.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
Probably felt like she'd made a terrible decision.
Yeah. And I said to her, look, I've got this massive exam. Like, this is turning the route of my life, and I really need to focus on that. And I frankly don't really have the time for this.
No.
And also I was angry, I was upset, I was devastated. Like, I had so much flying around, and also I thought that I did think that she looked a bit pathetic coming back. So that ignited the fire in me, to be honest. And so I was like, no, I just need some space from it right now. And I said, in 6 weeks after my exam is done, then I will talk to you, and, you know, we can resolve, not necessarily, you know, but like, we'll talk about it. And now
I'm not going to pick the whole thing apart.
Yeah.
Because it's a long story of ups and downs. And it didn't completely end there. There was sort of intermediate points where she was back around.
I just want to say, every single time I asked for no contact, and every single time I was not the one breaking it.
Yeah.
In my defense, I would say, I would say this is a massive thing. Ask for no contact.
Right. It makes it
whether you're an adult or you're a child.
Yes.
Like, if you've just gone through quite an intense breakup. This is I listened to Emma Chamberlain's podcast, and credit to her, because this is her point. If you ever loved them, you will not be able to be friends with them.
Yeah.
Categorically.
100%.
You will not be able to be friends with them. There will be remaining feelings there. And so you have to go no contact, because you keep talking to them will just keep opening that wound that you're trying to heal from. It does not help.
Yes. And it was very interesting, because after a while, she had come up with this idea about you writing to each other so you could keep in contact, which was a terrible idea.
It kind of was, yeah. It kind of was. At the time, it didn't seem like that.
Yeah.
At the time, it sounded reasonable.
But every time, what I tried to do was, because your dad was getting quite frustrated with it, and she even came to our house at one point after and said, I don't ever want that girl in my house again.
He drove off.
And you were in a park having a little lunch with her, because you were trying to sort of unwind it, weren't you?
Yeah.
And it was really beautiful that you were both trying to navigate this breakup. And then you called me and said, will you give us a lift home?
Yeah.
And I brought you home because, of course, I'm going to do whatever you need. And she wanted to have a conversation with me and apologise to me. Not that she needed to. But when your father walked in, he just walked straight out again, furious. And then we had a row later when I was just saying, you've got to do what your daughter needs. It's got to be done.
But I would say, I think it was very difficult because we did kind of reopen things a few times. Not
she
no open
things
she
a few times.
She kept and that was hard because it definitely prolonged the healing process. Like I remember when we first broke up, again listening to Emma Chamberlain's podcast, Emma Chamberlain said at least 6 months. Like that's how long, that's your minimum after a big breakup. Like but in 6 months time you will start to feel better,
and what a wonderful thing to know. Actually,
and it was so healing. It was really helpful.
I mean, because some people it's 2 weeks, but they didn't really have.
I was going through it for months. I was really struggling.
And why do you think that it was so hard?
Because I blamed myself for a lot of what happened.
Why?
Well, because firstly, I was the one who was broken up with, and because it was so abrupt, and there wasn't really a reason for it. I had so many things in my mind. I was trying to. I'm a problem solver, so I was trying to unpick what it was.
Yes.
And I kept coming back to things that I had maybe done or said, or like things I should have done more. There was the constant talking and conversation of things I should have done. And that really wasn't helpful. Because I was hurting because of the breakup, and I was also hurting because I had so much blame for myself, basically. So I was and
nothing I said that.
No.
And it's really interesting because, in my opinion, it was always going to it's always going to end at some point.
But I put in my calendar when we broke up 6 months from that. I was like, you should be over her by now. I put that date in my calendar. But that date has kept being pushed back because it kept being reassessed, so it was.
Well, yes, because you were feeling a lot better.
I was feeling a lot better
by Christmas, for example, and then
and then I had.
So this is, I think, as a parent, it's actually, when they keep re-entering the child's life, it can be very frustrating because you can see the healing process going really well.
And
so
it was difficult because some of my friends not necessarily blamed me, but they said, oh, well, it's within your control not to respond.
Right.
Like she kept reaching out, and they were like, well,
to what extent? Let's talk about this while we're on this. To what extent does social media make this much harder? How did you know?
Oh my god! Oh my god! It makes it a lot harder because we still followed each other.
What? I thought you didn't.
Well,
wait, you said you no.
Well, we don't anymore. But after December, after the last time,
right?
We unfollowed each other.
Right?
We still
bad mistake.
Yeah, I know. Oh, okay.
So number one,
unfollow, blog, everything, etc.
Because also you've got lots of interlinking friends.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard.
I was seeing her face a lot on other people's stories. Seeing her stories, seeing her new life in London.
And thinking, oh my God, she's moved on, she's having this amazing time. And then when you did talk to her, you discovered it wasn't.
Yeah, that helps a lot. No,
but this is the problem. Because the problem with social media, but this is one of the reasons social media is so problematic.
Yeah.
Because we know, we've had these conversations time and again, that what you're seeing is
not
real. Created best possible.
And also, we were both aware that
yes. So then you're sitting there thinking, oh, she's moved on, oh, her life is so much better. No.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to an extent. But yeah, so I mean that did definitely complicate things. But I would say like one of the best things was unfollowing each other.
Okay.
Because a lot of, I mean, breakups take up so much of your mental energy, and a lot of that does come from like seeing their social media and everything. But it just helps to get them out of your mind, because you're not, every single, what I found is one of the most important steps was starting to do things for me again. Because everything I was doing until not long ago, I mean, a significant like way through the healing process, I was still doing things with her in mind.
Yeah.
So
I noticed that.
I would post things knowing that she would see them.
Yeah.
Like I would, like keep looking for her, or like reminders of her in certain places, or like things like that, and there were certain things that I would show up. Well, no, actually I didn't show up. I decided not to go. But like I was planning on doing things because she was going to be there, etc. And so like removing each other from social media was a massive step in that.
Yes.
I was no longer having her in mind when I was posting things. Yeah. It was very liberating. Because it was cutting another tie basically to that relationship.
Could you have done that straight away?
I could have.
Do you think you should have? You didn't want to. This is the problem. You can kind of,
and it's. I feel like it's also part of like you're in denial.
Yeah.
When you're in a break, like I would wake up and every single morning I'd be like, I'm no longer in a relationship with her. Like
and
it's
you
like
love being in a relationship.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
But you just generally, you're very much.
Yeah, I know. I
love being connected with
I
somebody.
really do. I'm definitely like a relationship person. I'm not. Yeah. And it was kind of part. It wasn't really part. Well, it was part of my identity. I saw myself as her girlfriend.
This is the point. Yeah.
I did actually. My identity did again go through quite a big crisis when we broke up, because it was like, who am I now apart from this person who I've been with for so long now? We'd known each other for over a year.
And in an intense way too.
Yeah, it was very intense.
This is the whole thing that's so interesting about teenagers, is this really unstable identity that kids have. And some will get into a relationship and it won't really touch the sides much, and then they've split up. But really those relationships aren't those big intense ones. But you have these big intense ones, and quite often they can really shift the dial a lot.
Yeah.
And having to come back again, and then but your dial remains shifted. Just is you're having to find a new equilibrium.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult to do.
Yeah. No, it is. And yeah, but I feel I've learned so many things through this experience, and I am who I am because of her. Like I am this person I am today, having gone through that relationship. And so I don't begrudge or anything. I wouldn't take anything back, because I feel like everything that I've learned is a valuable lesson. But it has shaped my identity. But part of the process of rebuilding your identity after a breakup is very important.
Moving forward, you went on Hinge, which was so funny because you showed just briefly, and it was very funny because you had guys and girls that you were talking to.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I've come off it again is, firstly, I think I have an addictive personality.
Fair enough.
Well, I do know that about myself with like TikTok. I can't be on. I don't have TikTok because I know like it just takes up so much of my time, because I don't have the control to just.
Oh, I'm like that with Heyday.
So I just lose it.
Same with Heyday.
I can't go on these things.
Yeah.
So I found that it was taking up a lot of my time because I was like,
but it's really enjoyable.
I was like, the next person, it is enjoyable.
It could be,
and the next person could be the one. So I was constantly scrolling.
They gamified it so much.
Person, but and I was really unhappy with all of the people who were coming up on my feed. So I was like, oh no, I'll just keep, there might be another one. There might be another. No.
But why boys as well as girls? Where are you at?
Well, because so this was part of the identity crisis thing, is that I don't know, like I don't want to call myself something.
Yeah.
And
like that.
And then not be that, because I feel like that will upset a lot of people.
But you told me early on, because I asked you about, whether you wanted to have a specific identity and you wanted to identify in the LGBT.
Yeah.
And actually, you said the thing about the lesbian community is it can feel really traitorous for to have a bi person.
Yeah.
Because
Well, yeah.
what I like is that you're holding your identity loosely.
Yeah.
You don't need to say I am.
I don't feel like any of the labels fit me. Like, I wouldn't call myself bi. I wouldn't call myself pan. Like, I don't really like any of the label things.
And why do we need to label?
Why do we need to label?
What does it matter?
And I know for me personally, there's actually not really like a characteristic that I look for in a person. It's if I feel that spark, if I feel that chemistry, then I remember saying to you, like, I feel like I'm attracted to people's souls.
and I want to pick up on that, because you said that spark and chemistry, and that makes it sound like a sexual thing, but it's not.
No. It's like deeper. If I connect emotionally with you, like I'm very sort of tuned into my like relationship, my emotional connections with people, and that's really important for me. And only then, if I feel like I have that with someone, then am I even entertaining the idea of moving forwards with that. I don't. So
your father and I met on a dating website at a time when there were no apps. Nobody was doing this. Everybody was shocked when they found out. But I was a TV presenter, and I kept meeting people all day, every day. But I kept thinking, this isn't who I am. I mean, this is a persona. And I didn't want people to mistake who I really was. And I was on that dating website for a year, just left my details up there. I wasn't contacting people. People were contacting me constantly, and I was just deleting them. And eventually I got an email from your father, and I just thought, now you're interesting. You're funny. You've read my profile. You can write beautifully, and you've sold yourself sufficiently. And that's pretty much your father anyway. And he takes these very seriously. And I think the reason I want to mention this is because I was talking to a boy I know who's in his 20s about dating apps and things. And he loved what I said, which is that you don't need all the people. You need the one person. You're looking for one person. So if you are on a dating app, or you are sort of hunting, and you're not meeting people in your immediate environment, which normally you will. So when you go to university, you'll meet people.
Well, that's one of the reasons why.
But with the dating apps, I think the trick is, you are hunting for just one. You don't need lots of people. So you need to know what you're looking for. And that's the importance of understanding your own identity and what matters to you. And spending that time with yourself, saying, who am I? What would fulfill me? Really can make a difference.
Yeah, that's one of the things that pissed me off, was that there were so many people who were coming up on my feed, or suggestive people, I don't know what you call it, but who just clearly had not put any effort into their profile. Not necessarily with pictures. Like, it doesn't need to be, a world-class photo headshot in black and white. Like, it's more just writing your bio about who you are and your passions. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway,
because that's what we connect with.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's not.
Yeah. How am I meant to decide? Yeah, exactly. Because actually, the number of people on a Hinge with six packs means that I'm more likely to choose someone with a six pack who can write well than if you just put a picture of your six pack.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yes. Yeah. But anyway, there was something I wanted to say before, which was that I think one of the things that has really helped me move on is getting that closure. And I realized that closure can be really difficult. Like, finding, closure is this construct, right? That we'll never know that we fully had it or not. Like, it's, but there were things that I was hanging on to, and through her coming back, kind of, or like, messaging me again, even though it was difficult, and it threw me back into the rut, and, it has prolonged everything. It meant that some of my answer questions were answered. And actually what became clear to me from the last time was that it wasn't my fault. And, none of this has ever been about me.
Right.
It wasn't me. And it meant that I could immediately let go of all of that blame that I had for myself.
Oh, I love that.
And someone described it to me, because I saw a teacher at school, and she asked me, how everything's been going, and I said, well, and she asked about the relationship, and I said, yeah, that's over. And well, she actually asked me because she already knew that it had ended, but she asked how I was doing. And she commented and she said that I seemed a lot lighter. And I explained to her that we had actually we had spoken again. And I feel like I finally got that closure. And she said, you had your finger stuck in the door. If you got your finger trapped in the door, pulling on it and trying to get away is painful. And it's not, you're not going to free your finger by tugging on it and trying to run away. Sometimes you have to go back and reopen the door to shut it again.
Who is this teacher? I wanted to send them.
And you're out. And I had my finger trapped in the door.
I love that.
Because I had all this residual, emotional blame and all these things. And so it did, for me personally, it did take talking to her again and going back and sort of, trying it that one last time to actually fully dislodge my finger.
Wow. And it worked.
And it worked. And I've been able to fully shut that door and I feel so much more free.
So for the parents who get very frustrated with this situation and all they see is the same thing over and over, oh my goodness, when is she going to get over it? Why? It's a process and we have to kind of inch forward and all the time keep revisiting like what's actually going on here. I was fully engaged with you, so I fully understood your mindset. I think your dad was looking on thinking, what the hell? Yeah. She's back again. We can't go to this now.
My friends, like I said earlier, my friends were getting quite frustrated because they were saying, why are you responding?
Yeah.
They were kind of blaming me. They were saying, like, why are you talking to her? Why haven't you blocked her yet? And I think it's because internally I was like, there's still something that we need to resolve. And I know that I kept entertaining it because there was still something there. And so, I kept that door open rather than blocking her. But now I've blocked her on everything, so it's fine.
Well, in a world of ghosting and, shallow interactions, all I can say is I think this was an incredible first relationship. I think you've grown immensely from it. Both of you, I think, have done the best you can with what was there. Because I think she was emotional as well. She was growing too. She was learning. Nobody's perfect. We make mistakes. We do stupid things. And I think actually the fact that you both communicated so well and you learned from this is amazing.
Yeah, and what's really amazing, probably the best communication that we've had was the last time we spoke.
Really?
Yeah, because we had nothing to lose anymore.
Yes,
so So this is another thing. This is where it's all coming out about. Yes. So because we were long distance, I mean, it was really difficult. First relationship and long distance, and incredible. 2 girls. It was really So because we weren't seeing each other that often, it made the moments when we did see each other very, very special. And I think it meant that neither of us wanted to bring things up to each other in person,
right,
or deal with problems, even though they were just small, for fear of ruining, that precious time that we had together because it was so rare. That did cause resentment for both of us. I think there were, things that we just weren't telling each other that, we problems that we had and things like that. So when things definitively came to an end, those last few conversations were the most honest conversations we've ever had with each other about our emotions because we had nothing to lose anymore.
Yeah.
And we could be unapologetically and completely honest and ourselves. And, because every single time we saw each other, it has been perfect.
How wonderful.
But yeah. So I would say that's one of the dangers of, I can't speak for adult relationships, but I know that in our experience, it was definitely the rare times that we would see each other.
Oh, 100%.
There was pressure for them to be really good.
I've had long distance relationships. They are extraordinarily tough, and exactly what you said. You end up trying to either when they see each other, there's so much resentment build up that is not a good situation. You've got to dump it all. Or that you're trying to say nothing, because you're desperately trying to make it all lovely and, very, very difficult. So, hats off to people who manage a long distance relationship.
I'm not doing it again. Doing that there.
Right, Phoebe, thank you. That was amazing. Yeah, interesting. I learned things.
Oh, me too.
I always learn. If you found this useful, please let somebody else know. Send it to friends, family, I don't know, anyone who might find it helpful. 5-star review would be amazing.
Yes.
That's how people find the podcast. Did you know that?
Really?
Yes, it's the reviews on the podcast app. So it really helps me. If you want to contact me, there's a little button at the top of the podcast notes, and that's just to kind of message me. I can't message you back. But if you want to actually email me, it's teenagersuntangled@gmail.com. The website's www.teenagersuntangled.com. I am on Substack now. It's just great because it's not algorithm based or anything. It's a really beautiful writing website. And that's it. That's it from me. Phoebe, thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Big hug from me. Have a great week. Bye-bye.